Welcome to Shadowproof. Evidence first, noise last.
Previously, we have mentioned multiple times that the U.S. Department of Defense released 3 videos about UFOs. This was the first time the U.S. government acknowledged the existence of UFOs, and subsequently, this matter became an official case. Next, an investigation report was issued. We will discuss this investigation report a bit later. However, since the U.S. acknowledged UFOs, when looking back at related events, the perception has completely changed. Because in the past, when such incidents occurred, most people believed someone was making up stories. But after the U.S. acknowledgement, the feeling when looking back has shifted. Therefore, today we introduce a famous UFO encounter that occurred in the past. This incident is perhaps considered the first UFO encounter in history with official evidence. That is the UFO encounter of Japan Airlines Flight 1628, which happened nearly 40 years ago on November 17, 1986. When a Japan Airlines cargo plane flying from Paris to Tokyo encountered several unidentified flying objects in the skies over Alaska, it became a sensational event both in the United States and Japan that year. The flight number was 1628. The aircraft was a large Boeing 747 cargo plane, 70 meters long with a wingspan of. Since it was a very large cargo plane, there were not many people on board. That day, there were only 3 people on this flight, all Japanese. They were Captain Terauchi Kenju, 47 years old, First Officer Tomifuzi Takanori, 39 years old, and a flight engineer named Tetsu Kuda Yoshio, 33 years old. The captain of this flight was originally a pilot for the Japan Self-Defense Forces with over 10,000 flight hours, very experienced. The aircraft encountered the unidentified flying objects while preparing to land at an airport in Alaska, USA. The encounter time was 5:10 p.m. local time in the USA, at a location 770 kilometers northeast of the airport. The captain saw 2 luminous objects appear behind the aircraft, at the 7 o'clock position, i.e., the left rear. These 2 objects overtook the aircraft at extremely high speed, flying to the front, then stopped 1 mile, about 1.5 kilometers, ahead to the left of the aircraft, maintaining the same flight speed as the aircraft. The altitude at that time was about 10,000 meters, with a flight speed of 910 kilometers. This experienced captain had never seen anything like this throughout his flying career. The other 2 crew members in the cockpit at that time also saw these objects. The 3 of them stared at the 2 objects for several minutes but still could not identify what they were. Therefore, the captain immediately reported to the ground control center. The time of reporting to the ground was about 5:18 p.m., and it was already dark. The captain told the ground, "This is Japan Airlines Flight 1628. 2 unidentified flying objects have appeared ahead of us. Please confirm if there are any aircraft near us." Initially, the ground control center replied no. They said the radar did not show any aircraft around you. Moreover, at this time, there definitely could not be any aircraft in your area. But shortly after, the control center contacted the captain again and said they had detected an object at your 6 o'clock direction. It appeared behind you, not around you. About 5 miles, approximately 8 kilometers away from. This was strange because all 3 people on flight 1628 saw 2 objects ahead, not behind. What the control center said made them even more tense. Perhaps there was some object behind the aircraft that they did not notice. Then, the captain told the ground, "I see 2 flying objects with the naked eye. These 2 flying objects emit dazzling white-yellow light. They are always moving ahead of us at high speed, maintaining a distance of 1 mile from us." Since the ground control center cannot identify the flying objects ahead as described by the captain, they immediately contacted the U.S. Air Force to confirm if there were any Air Force aircraft nearby. But the Air Force base denied it, saying they did not have any aircraft on missions in that area. However, the Air Force also detected this unidentified object on radar and saw it behind, not ahead of Flight 1628. Based on the U.S. military's account at the time, they said this showed up very clearly on military radar, meaning it was definitely a real object and not an unidentified weather phenomenon. Since ground radar couldn't confirm the 2 things the captain saw, during subsequent communication with the ground, the captain continued describing these 2 objects. He said these 2 things were very large, each about the size of their aircraft. The aircraft is 70 meters long, and those things were estimated to be 70 to 80 meters as well, shaped like a square, with glowing sides and a black part in the middle of unclear nature. In the middle, it looked like 2 vertical equal signs flying there. As the captain kept contacting the ground, He noticed these two objects slowly approach. They got closer and closer, at the nearest point only 150 meters away. Right at that moment, everyone on the aircraft clearly saw what these two things looked. The two objects looked like this. On both sides were glowing parts with countless small holes, these holes rotating outward, like two rotors spinning outward, full of holes on the rotors. He said the light seemed to be emitted from these small holes, with a black part in the middle that couldn't be made out. The light emitted from these two objects was extremely bright and strong, illuminating the entire cabin, just like two giant searchlights shining into their cabin. Everyone in the cabin felt a strong heat radiating. What the captain feared most at that time was that this thing would collide with them. This situation lasted for a few minutes, and then these two objects suddenly disappeared from their sight. According to the captain, they didn't vanish, but these two things suddenly stopped to let their aircraft fly past. After these two things disappeared, the cabin immediately returned to pitch darkness. From the moment these two objects appeared until they disappeared, the total time was 12 minutes. However, this incident wasn't over yet. Another 5 minutes later, in the darkness ahead of them, two blue glowing objects appeared again. These two objects were different from the previous ones. They emitted a very soft blue light, not a harsh yellow light like the other two objects. Another difference was that the glowing objects earlier were moving, while these blue glowing objects remained stationary. These blue glowing objects were also very large, as big as the aircraft. And then these two blue glowing objects also started approaching. This time, when they actually got close, it terrified the flight crew because they saw that these two blue glowing objects were actually just the two ends of a huge black object. After seeing this situation, Captain Terauchi immediately reported to the ground, requesting to evade. After hearing the report, the ground immediately suggested the captain perform evasive maneuvers, so the captain promptly steered the aircraft. But unfortunately, this huge object still caught up with them. Actually, during this time, the ground maintained contact with the Air Force because the civilian aviation side believed this incident was no longer within their jurisdiction. At that time, the Air Force also confirmed there was a huge object extremely close to Flight 1628. And radar signals showed this huge object followed Flight 1628 for a full 14 minutes. Then, it suddenly disappeared from radar, also vanishing from sight. At the moment this thing disappeared, the aircraft was 270 kilometers. After that, the aircraft landed safely at Alaska Airport. All three flight crew members were taken by the U.S. side for investigation. The person in charge of the control center at the time also recalled that when these three got off the aircraft, they were extremely heavy. Through separate interrogations, the unidentified flying objects described by the three were the captain drew what they saw. This is what the captain drew at the time. He said this thing appeared in front of the left side of the aircraft, looking like two vertical. And then, upon getting closer, they saw countless small holes on it, rotating outward. And all these unidentified flying objects, from appearance to disappearance, lasted a total of 31 minutes. Throughout the process, all unidentified flying objects showed clear anti-gravity characteristics. In other words, they moved in ways inconsistent with the laws of physics. And the radar data clearly marked their appearance and disappearance. To confirm what this thing was, the timestamps of appearance basically matched the captain. Moreover, it wasn't just one radar that detected these flying objects. Many radars at the control center and on the ground detected them simultaneously. That means this thing really existed. This radar data is the first hard evidence captured by civilian aviation in history. Previously, incidents like Roswell were handled by the military, who took away the remnants of these things. What remained were just legends. This is the first time civilian aviation detected hard evidence on radar. 6 days later, the radar data and the captain's report were sent to Washington. The Japan Airlines flight crew also returned to Japan. Meanwhile, the media quickly learned of this incident. As soon as media outlets began reporting on it, the US government stepped forward to deny the rumor. They said the data displayed on the radar was a mistake. But some people questioned, if the radar malfunctioned, then what did the flight crew see? The US government didn't answer. Later, the director of a government aviation magazine wrote an article saying, according to their analysis, what the Japanese flight crew saw on the aircraft at that time was probably Jupiter. Regarding this statement, Captain Terauchi and the two other crew members had no response. They also declined media interviews. The incident subsequently disappeared from media channels. Later, this incident once again captured public attention in 2001. On May 9, 2001, as many as 30 high-ranking U.S. officials, including military personnel and NASA affiliates, attended a seminar. The Disclosure Project. The Disclosure Project is a specialized initiative exposing the U.S. government's cover-up of extraterrestrial. During this seminar, John Callahan, head of the Accident Investigation Division of the FAA, stated that the U.S. government had concealed the truth about the UFO incident involving Japan Airlines Flight 1628, 15 years earlier, in 1980. In fact, at that time, the captain's testimony and radar data was sent to Washington, specifically to John Callahan. He then mentioned that 9 people from the White House came. Among these 9 were 3 advisors close to President Reagan, 3 from the FBI, 3 from the CIA, and Callahan, making 10 in total, who held a secret meeting in an FAA conference room. During this meeting, he presented the captain's testimony and explained the radar data to the other 9. Additionally, as an aviation expert, he finally expressed his opinion. He believed it was something beyond Earth's technology. After hearing his explanation, the 9 immediately left. We were never here today, this meeting never happened, and its contents must never be disclosed. A few days later, he received notification that the president had classified the incident as top secret. However, before the meeting took place, Callahan had secretly copied a set of data, and during this seminar and testimony, Callahan presented the data he had secretly preserved. The drawing made by the captain was preserved by him, otherwise, you wouldn't see it now. Thanks to Callahan providing this evidence, the UFO incident sealed 15 years ago once again attracted media attention. Many might wonder why he wasn't punished for disclosing this. Perhaps because Callahan was already a high-ranking official, and many others also stood up and testified about the incident. Maybe that's why he remained safe. So why did he secretly copy a set back then? It was because he felt that after working in this field for many years, he had never encountered a real UFO in civilian aviation data. He believed this was definitely valuable information, so before submitting it, he secretly copied a set, suspecting the government might cover it up. Of course, after the incident regained attention, Japanese media immediately contacted Japan Airlines. The result was that they were told Captain Terauchi had resigned shortly after the incident. They didn't know where he went. The other 2 crew members were also unreachable. However, Japan found an audio recording from before the information was sealed, where media interviewed Captain Terauchi and he confirmed the incident. When I saw this thing on the plane, my first feeling was that it wasn't. It wasn't. The rest of his statement matched what we discussed earlier. Additionally, this recording contained information unknown to many. That was when the second supersonic flying object appeared. Ground control asked the captain if he needed fighter jets to escort them. No need. At first glance, the captain's refusal of fighter jets seemed unreasonable. But upon analysis, it was seen as a sign of remarkable wisdom. First, he had already confirmed the existence of this UFO with his own eyes. If fighter jets came, 2 outcomes were possible. Either this thing would retaliate, destroying both him and the fighter jets. This was a very bad outcome. Or even if it didn't destroy both, the captain believed that if seen by fighter jets, he would certainly disappear afterward. This is why most pilots don't want to admit seeing UFOs. D had to write reports and undergo investigations, at worst, So calling fighter jets, regardless of the outcome, was not a good result for him. Thus, the captain's response further proves he saw something very frightening. Actually, from that recording, it can be heard that the captain was very excited when speaking to the media at that time. But suddenly, the media stopped reporting, and he also stopped talking, so he must have been under some pressure. And in fact, 1 month after the Japanese airline incident with Evo, another event occurred. That was on December 21, 1986, when a survey ship from the Japanese Fisheries Agency was conducting a fisheries survey in the Pacific Ocean and encountered an unidentified. This survey ship was named Keimaru, a very large scientific research vessel equipped with various advanced machinery. Additionally, everyone on board was a scientist, totaling 9 people, including the ship's pilot, who was also a scientist. On December 21, 1986, around 6 p.m., the radar on their ship displayed a massive object appearing around the vessel. From the radar, this object was circling the ship at high speed, not in the water but in the air. However, those on board could not see it with the naked eye or telescopes, nor did they hear any sound. Looking at the radar, it showed a massive object circling around them. The weather conditions at that time were very good, with no fog or rain. Moreover, according to the radar display, the size of this object was at least 300 meters, so logically, it should have been visible. And 10 minutes after this object appeared on the radar, it suddenly disappeared. Afterward, they calculated based on the radar data how fast the object was circling the ship. It was 5,000 kilometers per hour, so from the radar, this thing wasn't flying but rather moving instantaneously. Then, after another 2 hours, around past 8 p.m., this object appeared again and started circling the ship once more, still invisible to the naked eye, and then disappeared again. Then, after another 3 hours, around past 11 p.m., this thing appeared again, approaching the ship from behind at an extremely fast speed. That night, 3 people were on duty. They first saw it on the radar, and then 2 of them ran to the back of the ship to look. The speed of this thing at that time was extremely fast, feeling like it was about to crash. And just as they saw on the radar that it was about to hit the ship, it suddenly disappeared from the radar. The 2 people at the back of the ship didn't see anything, but all 3 of them heard a sound, like something flying by quickly, swishing through the air. After they heard this sound, the person observing the radar in the cabin suddenly saw a red light appear in front of the ship and gradually disappear. This light was not dazzling, but it felt like something very fast suddenly flew by. After the ship returned to Japan, they checked the radar data, proving that the radar was not damaged and the data was real. All those involved in this incident on the KMRU were scientists, so this event was later published in a scientific journal, becoming a highly credible UFO sighting. Finally, we will talk about the continuation of the U.S. investigation into UFOs. In June 2021, the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a report on this UFO investigation. The Director of National Intelligence is a position directly under the authority of the U.S. President. Everyone knows that the most famous intelligence agency in the U.S. is the CIA, but in fact, there are a total of 16 intelligence agencies known in the U.S. With the CIA, other agencies include the National Security Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the National Police Agency. These 16 agencies are independent. Independent means their information is not shared with each other, but sometimes information from all agencies needs to be gathered to see the whole picture or truth. In such cases, a coordinating agency is needed, and this coordinating agency is the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And this report is the result of the analysis conducted by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence on 144 UAP cases from 2004 to March 2021. The conclusion drawn is that, except for one case confirmed to be a balloon, the remaining 143 cases are unknown. Although it's unknown what they are, it can be confirmed that most of these 143 cases are real objects. That is, these unidentified flying objects are not some kind of illusion or atmospheric phenomena but actual physical objects. Moreover, among them, 18 objects exhibited clear physical phenomena. For example, they could hover in midair without being affected by wind resistance, or move at high speeds without any detectable engine. That is, this thing clearly has no engine, nothing at all, yet it can move around. And among these 143 unidentified flying object events, the latest one was on February 21, 2021. U.S. airline Flight 2292 encountered an unidentified flying object at an altitude of 36,000 feet, which is about 10,000 meters above the sky of New Mexico. This cylindrical unidentified object flew over the plane at high speed. After this incident occurred, the FBI launched an investigation. Regarding the investigation report, it can be found on the official FBI website. Of course, the conclusion of this report is that they also don't know what this is. Although it's unknown what many such flying objects ultimately are, it has gradually been discovered that they all share a common characteristic. That is, they often appear near nuclear facilities. For example, the incident involving U.S. airline Flight 2292 encountering an unidentified flying New Mexico was precisely where the United States conducted nuclear tests, and the Roswell incident also occurred here. Another example is the Fukushima nuclear disaster. After the March 11th earthquake in Japan, the Fukushima nuclear power plant was destroyed. Since then, the Fukushima nuclear power plant area has been completely off limits. This was confirmed by the residents of Fukushima. Following the March 11th nuclear power plant disaster, TBS installed fixed surveillance cameras around the Fukushima plant. The cameras operate continuously 24 hours a day and capture this unidentified objects hovering in the area. Of course, these are not drones. The Japanese government confirmed they are not involved. The television station is also not involved. So, what there remains?
Another TBS footage shows that when a magnitude 6 earthquake occurred in Miyagi, Fukushima, a flying object passed by.
This object was very large, emitting light onto the sea surface and creating a reflection that looked like a disc at the bottom of the sea.
Currently on YouTube, many of these videos have been deleted.
Regarding what these objects are doing and why they always appear near nuclear facilities, we will analyze in the next video. In summary, the US report concludes, although it is unknown what they are, it is clear that there are unidentified things flying in the Earth's sky and in the United States. The US government explains that the reason they officially investigate UFOs is not because they are interested in aliens. What they are most concerned about is whether they are spy planes or weapons from another country. Because they believe that if they are truly aliens, investigating would be pointless. If they wanted to destroy us, with the superior technology we get here, we would certainly be no match.
There is a danger from outside this world. And I ask you, isn't there also danger within ourselves?
If the proof convinced you, subscribe and open the next case.